I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're super excited to have Clay Olsen with us, and today's topic is going to be on teens and pornography, the latest research and resources. But before we begin, I did want to do a couple of housekeeping items, and that is if for some reason you're having a difficult time with the audio, oh, and actually I should show my screen. That might help. Here we go. So, let me go back to this. So if for some reason you are having a difficult time with the audio, then you should now be able to see on your screen the telephone number that you can dial into, and you can use the access code that was sent to you in your email to be able to listen with your phone and then view it on the screen. And then also, if you end up with any questions, go ahead and just type those into the question box. And we are recording the webinar, and it will be archived. And so that should take place sometime next week. And then before I turn the time over to Clay, I did want to introduce you a little bit to the Dibble Institute. So on your screen is Charlie and Helen Dibble, and Charlie was our founder. And after he retired from being an engineer, he decided that there was a problem with the divorce rate in the country, and being an engineer, he wanted to come up with a solution. So through a very generous grant of his own money, he put together a team of experts and founded the Dibble Institute. And the Dibble Institute has been around for over 20 years now. Literally, we've helped serve hundreds of thousands of youth all across the country and even around the world. And the Dibble Institute is a national independent nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to equipping all young people with the skills and knowledge they need to develop healthy romantic relationships now and in the future. And so today's presenter, as I mentioned, is Clay Olsen. And the reason why we're especially intrigued and honored to have Clay come speak to us today is because he really has made it his life's work and his life's mission to stay up to date on the latest research on how pornography is impacting relationships in teens and young adults and adults, and what the latest resources are to help anyone who does want to deal with some of the problems that are coming up. And so, Clay, if you're ready, I will.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and switch the screen over to you.
You can see my screen, I assume, still?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And we're maximizing what we can here. So ultimately what we want to talk about over the next little bit, and I see that there's a fair amount of us on this webinar and more continue to join. Many of us around this subject, this is not an easy subject. And probably the biggest question that I always get when talking about this is the fact that this is fairly, like, how did you get into this, and why did you get into this? And that's a fair question, because it's not something that's kind of a normal career pursuit to want to address a controversial subject A, and B, dedicate your life to helping teens understand these issues. And so, when I told my wife that I was going to be doing this, I was going to leave my former company that I had started, it took her a little while to get on board, let's just say that. But it is something that is unique to our day. It is something that is addressing this audience, this generation, this rising generation, like no other time in the history of the world. I mean, this generation growing up, millennials and younger, are dealing with this to an intensity and scale that no other generation has had to ever, period. And so it is, although it has been around since the beginning of, since for all of our lifetimes, and our parents and our grandparents, it's been around, but not nearly in the same way that it is today. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and around the research surrounding some of these details. And ultimately, as you can see on your screen, hopefully still, you'll see that what we want to talk about is that pornography is, in fact, harmful, and that research is proving it. And that's, I want to make sure that we understand that last part, the research is proving it. If we look back in our history, we've had to learn a lot of things the hard way, and there's a lot of things that we didn't know were harmful in the beginning, and later research caught up with that truth and helped us understand that. Things like alcohol, things like ads used to or promote nursing mothers drinking alcohol so that the benefits would pass through their body and onto the nursing child. Things like tobacco, where doctors used to prescribe smoking as a way to soothe the nerves and clean the lungs. Things like cocaine, where we used to hand those over to children. I'll have to kind of move this around on your screen. I'm just doing this manually. This is not the animation that was intended, but you can see this right here. Cocaine toothache drops for children. So, I mean, these are laughable today, but these are real ads, and these are real ideas back before we knew that these things were potentially harmful to individuals. And so we kind of picked up the pieces, and we learned, and we moved on. Well, today we're learning the same type of experience where science is catching up with truth, and then society catching up with science around the subject and topic of pornography. Pornography used to be one of those things that it was kind of more of opinion-driven, morally driven, religiously driven, where it was kind of something that was surrounded by individual belief systems around its potential harm or no harm. Today, that's no longer the case. Research is helping us understand that it's impacting our brain, our heart, and our world at large. And many listeners here might have an understanding around some of this content. Some of you might be skeptical as to where things are. It's still something that is debated and controversial, less and less so among academia, but nonetheless among within society, something that is very much still a very hot topic. Whereas we have moved on other subjects like the potential harms of tobacco. No one debates that. No one questions that today, but it was once a heated discussion. And again, we believe that not a day not far from now, we will be thinking of this issue in a similar way that we do now with tobacco. But look, I think it's important that we understand some of these details and some of the research, and so I want to kind of jump around through. And for anybody that's listening that doesn't really know kind of why I'm speaking with you and why what gives me any sort of credibility to address this, I started an organization, and I'll show you a little bit about that later on. But I started an organization called Fight the New Drug, and since its inception, since we began, our motive has always been to help young people understand the potential risks so that they could make an educated decision on the subject, trying to change the conversation around the topic, and ultimately help individuals pursue real connections and real love. And in doing so, we have spoken with hundreds of thousands of youth around the world, received emails from hundreds of thousands of youth as young as 7 and 8 years old, struggling with this. And so we have been able to learn a great deal from actual individuals. I have, for the better half of a decade now, I've traveled around the world to Germany, the UK, United States, and other parts of the world, in Canada, Mexico, Trinidad, and Guatemala, and other places where I have not only been able to go out and speak on the subject, but also learn from experts and interview neuroscientists, psychologists, and therapists, and understand this issue better. And so that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from, is from the voice of the youth and understanding them better and what we can do to address this issue better, and also from the voice of the experts, kind of helping you understand what they've taught us over the years. This is a slide that kind of goes through a number of different headlines today, and as we talk to school principals, we've done over 600 public schools within the United States addressing this issue for high schools and middle schools and junior highs. And as we talk to these faculty and the administration, and law enforcement in these communities, they are seeing, like never before in their 30, 40-year career, in the last 3 to 3 years, 5 to 3 years, they are seeing far more sexuality and sexual deviance and sexual aggressive behavior among youth than they ever had in their entire career. And so this is obviously something that's impacting this generation very uniquely. And a lot of parents ask me this question, like, how do good kids get wrapped up into this? And I think it's important to understand kind of the world that they're growing up in. And I'll just do this briefly because I think that a lot of us are on the same page here. But I had a gentleman after a presentation I was doing in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I don't know how many of the listeners are from that area, but I had a gentleman come up to me after a presentation, and he asked me if he could share his story, and I, of course, said okay, and that's pretty common. That happens a lot of times. But he said, well, I'd like to tell you what happened when I was 16 years old. So when I was 16, my mother came in shortly after my birthday, came in with a box of pornographic magazines and dropped them on the floor and said, "It's time you became a man," and walked out of the room. And you know, he told me this story, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, for real, that happened? You know, if I were to get a raise of hands from, you know, all the listeners here, how many of you either received that kind of a gesture from your mother when you turned 16, or how many of you mothers did that for your 16-year-old sons? We probably have no hands. I mean, that is a fairly unique and kind of a more of an extreme example of what had happened to him when he was young, which set him on a path to struggle with this for years and years to come. But I think that as I've analyzed that experience that he told me, I realized that that's what's happening today with all of the youth in our societies, in our families, in our communities, except that it's not at age 16. It's much, much younger. Again, we've received emails from 7- and 8-year-olds looking for help. It's not a box of magazines. That is happening with youth today. It's not 16. It's much younger. It's not a box of, you know, just naked women. It's much worse. And it's not at it's not a box of 100 magazines. It's unlimited. And so this is a different, unique world that we're growing up in. And I give the analogy of SimCity, which many of you will be aware of. That's a computer game that you can create your own society with. And and you control kind of what happens in that society, and your ultimate goal is to create a society that's thriving and successful. And again, we are youth. If we were to change the rules of that game and to make it addiction edition, so that we're pushing individuals as best we could toward addictive behavior, and toward this specific addictive behavior, we would do a lot of things like make it normalized. We would make it, you know, reduce barriers like cost. We would do a number of things to kind of set that stage. And if we were to analyze that, that's exactly the world they are growing up in. So to understand that this is something that is impacting youth on a profound level, and we need to address this. Some of the emails that we get out of the hundreds of thousands, I'll pick up just a few here. This young boy said that my life now would have been much different if my father had understood that pornography was a true addiction and that just stop wasn't an option. This idea that pornography can be a real addiction, not just kind of, you know, get over it or, you know, just control it, you weakling kind of thing, like you pervert. And this is something that's real, is something that's, again, unique to the narrative that is coming out today, whereas, you know, even 5-10 years ago, that wasn't so much the case. Now, if this were a video, this would be playing and showing you kind of internally what the brain looks like, and I think it's important that we spend a little time understanding addiction as a whole. And I'll briefly just mention, kind of describe this to you. But within the brain, each of us have a reward center. I think this is pretty common knowledge. When we do things that we enjoy, that we like, pleasure chemicals are released into this reward pathway, into this reward center of the brain, and it makes us feel good and want to repeat those behaviors. We've known for some time through the research that this part of the brain can be hijacked through substance abuse and now process addiction and behavioral addictions as well. That individuals that you know, lean into those aspects can rewire this portion of the brain to where that context of release and that quantity of chemical release in the neural pathway, in the reward pathway, can literally cause an individual to need more of it more often in a more hardcore version just to sustain a level of normality, to feel normal. And we see this with other types of addictions. And it's something that is challenging for a large portion of the United States and the world, as we deal with a lot of different compulsivities in behavior. We didn't always know this same process applied to behavioral or process addictions that pornography would fall under, and that's kind of the new information. That if we look at this video, if I were able to play this video, which I don't think I am, and I don't know if that's available. I'm afraid that if I push play, this would again kick me off. So
yeah, probably.
Do you think I should probably not attempt it? So so these videos. Well, actually, let me see if this is. Are you able to see this?
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's try this. I think this is going to be valuable to the listeners. So let's try this. I'm going to pull out my headphones and let you listen to this video of these experts. Again, one from Berlin, one of the world's leading neuroscientists, one from Texas, an adjunct professor at the University of Texas, and then another Dr. Zimbardo from Stanford, talking about how this can impact the brain. So take a listen.
Is a fascinating machine, really.
In terms of brain plasticity, everything that we do each and every day shapes our brain.
We call it neuroplastic. Just as plastic is changeable and malleable, we can change the shape of the brain.
And I actually did a study recently on this. So we put people in the scanner and we looked at their brain structure and associated this brain structure with the amount of pornography they consume. So basically we found in our study that the gray matter in the reward center is generally smaller in those people who watch more porn.
We've seen that with multiple addictions, from methamphetamine to cocaine, others, and now with pornography addiction. It's almost as if the brain is saying, I like pleasure, but you're killing me. This is too much.
My hypothesis was that the ventral striatum and the reward region should be bigger in those people watching pornography. And it's exactly the other way around. So,
were you shocked?
Yes, yes.
There is solid research to show that brain functioning changes. The more you watch pornography, then you get a blip up when the pornography is totally new. But totally new soon becomes old as you watch that.
People need to watch more or get more interesting and novel stuff to get the same level of activity in the reward system.
Yeah, so it's a paradox. When it starts out, porn is turning you on, and the more porn you watch, the less likely you are to get aroused.
Which seems to indicate that the normal, regular thing you were used to isn't sufficient anymore.
The wonderful thing about the human mind is the power of curiosity to invent, to create, but what pornography does is it puts a straitjacket on our mind to say, no, this is the only thing I'm interested in, and then ultimately that any kind of compulsion is destructive.
Now, just out of curiosity, how did that work? Were people able to hear that?
Yep.
You think so? Okay. So please make comments, talk to us, make sure that we're making good use of time here.
Yeah, and they just let me know.
Listen to that.
They just typed in to let me know that they heard it loud and clear.
Great, awesome. And we've got several of these coming out, by the way, over the next little while. So you can go to our website. You can also go to another website called Truth About Porn and get more and more of these kind of expert interviews coming out. And feel free to check those out. But very interesting, right? I mean, I think we can all agree that that's fascinating new research coming out suggesting that the brain, they talk specifically about not only brain functioning changing, but also the gray matter of the brain actually decreasing in size, which is responsible for decision making. So it's no wonder that certain addicts have a difficult time stopping their unwanted behaviors, because the part of their brain that's supposed to help them through that in many cases has been changed and altered and rewired over time. And it's again, it's this process, this neurological process that once we discovered that pornography fit into that same mold, that it was having a similar impact on the brain, it started to kind of like connect a lot of dots. We started to understand a lot more of the sexual compulsivity that's sweeping across the world. This is another animation that I can't show. Well, actually, I probably might be able to. But this is an animation helping us understand that, like, this is the frontal lobe. Right here is showing the frontal lobes of the brain, which is the decision-making part of the brain. And it's critical that this is working at full capacity to help us kind of analyze those decisions that we're making and recognizing the potential consequences of certain decisions. And if that's not working at full capacity, it's no wonder that addicts have a hard time stopping those unwanted behaviors. As we kind of understand the neuroscience behind this compulsion, it helps us understand how to now address it, whereas before we were completely, thinking of it wrong. Dr. Valerie Voon out of Cambridge University has done a number of studies and recently come out with a study showing, and she studies addiction specifically on the brain. She actually analyzed drug-addicted brain scans to pornography and sexual addiction brain scans, and they mirrored one another. And her research has gone on to help confirm a lot of the theories around pornography addiction. In fact, pornography addiction, that's a strong word, especially in academia. A lot of people have debated whether it is an addiction, whether it can be an addiction. And again, the most recent neuroscience studies coming out of institutions like Cambridge, Yale, the Max Planck Institute of Human Development, and many others are all confirming the addictive model and the addictive potential of pornography. And so this is something that we're kind of recognizing and opening our eyes to more and more. Again, more emails. It's convenient nowadays. I wish I could stop. I really do, but porn is just the worst drug. I quit smoking, drinking, taking pills, smoking weed, but I just can't stop watching porn. I wish I could quit. Another kid talked about suicidal thoughts as a result of his struggle, and this is something that was repeated more and more as we continue to get emails. For time's sake, I'm going to skip this video, but this is a friend of ours named Ryan who dealt with this very issue, and he struggled in his own past with this, as many do. And he talks about how it led him to need more often in a more hardcore version, and to the point where he acted out in very harmful ways that landed him in a juvenile center and in jail for a little while, and that really rocked his world, and he then kind of turned around and started to work hard at helping others understand this. It's an inspiring story. You can go check it out at fightthenewdrug.org. But let's talk about the heart, and I think this is a very intriguing area of the research, because pornography doesn't make your hair fall out, it doesn't make you walk in a crooked line, it doesn't dilate your eyes or make you smell weird. Like, it doesn't have those physical manifestations like other addictions can. But what it ultimately impacts, according to the research, is on the individual level, is as how we perceive others and how we connect with others on a major level. Research is helping us understand that it affects what we love, how much we love, how we think about those we love, and how we express love. And many of you many of you are aware of John Gottman and his research, and how he had, I believe I have a slide here in a second, perhaps I don't, but he had, for a long time, thought that pornography had no harm, and he recently, he and his wife wrote a letter to an open letter to to pornography, and it was a kind of an earth-shattering moment where he had kind of come back and said, the research has persuaded me to think of this very differently as I've analyzed this and looked at the research, and so it's, again, more and more are catching up with that truth as we talked about earlier, and recognizing that it has impacts on relationships, on our ability to connect and love with others. Now, this is the reason why it looks all convoluted is because this is a slide that builds on top of itself. For those that joined late, we were unable to get it to the point where we could show the presentation in its full capacity, so I'm happy to just show you it in this way, but I will try to pull some of this off so you can read what is there. Now, this is a man by the name of Norman Deutsch. Many of you know him. He's written a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. And he talks about how our sexual preferences and our desires shift and mold on a biological level over time according to what we consume on a regular basis. Now that's pretty important to understand in here, so I'm going to repeat that. Our sexual interests and preferences can shift and mold and adapt over time and on a biological level according to what we consume on a regular basis. So the question then becomes, what is that leading to as individuals are consuming pornography at unprecedented levels, especially minors and adolescents, as their frontal lobes and their developing minds are still kind of reaching a full capacity level. And we have seen in some of these emails that I've pushed down here talk about the fact that pornography has really shifted the sexual template of an entire generation. I'm not going to try to clean this up for you right now. It would take me too much time, but one youth said that he now needs violent fantasies in order to get aroused, and he was 13 years old when he wrote that. The stuff he used to watch no longer worked for him. A young girl said that pornography has made her react positively to non-consensual sex and violence against women. So this is definitely something that's impacting what we love. The very kind of interests on our sexual preferences and sexual tastes can be morphed and warped according to what we consume. And it's more prominent and more potent to those that are to minors, as they are really establishing many of their sexual desires at a very young age. Raymond Bergner and Anna Bridges did a study, and they found that those that consume pornography on a regular basis experienced a significant decrease in their satisfaction with their partners. Their commitment to their partners decreased significantly with the in direct correlation and correspondence to the amount of pornography they consumed. So we are seeing it very much impact how much we care for one another in those relationships. It's obviously having a profound impact on, again, this is something that animated on, but having a profound impact on what we, how we look at those around us. You can see somewhere, it's not worth it, but how we look at those, we surround ourselves with, especially those that we care a great deal for, and those more intimate relationships. It changes everything to very objectify those around us. In fact, as I'll show you later, the part of the brain that lights up for men who view pornography, as they did brain scans, was the part of the brain associated with dealing and working with objects, not with human beings. And so it very much teaches us to treat sexuality and the subjects of sexuality as objects, which can have a profound impact, especially among youth. Now, this is interesting. I want you to look at this screen, and I'm glad that at least this slide is going to work out for us a little bit. And, studies were done. In fact, Time magazine, for those of you who read that magazine, recently they just came out with a cover feature story that was on the front cover of the magazine, and it kind of was very successful. And they studied and analyzed this very thing that I'm going to talk about because they found it so intriguing, and we did too. And so we've been talking about this for some time now. But in 1992, which is pre-internet, by the way, most of you started getting internet in your homes if you were kind of with it and kind of ahead of the curve. You were in the kind of later, early 90s to mid 90s. And so this first study done by the United States Health and Wellness Association was done pre-internet in households for the most part. And what this study was looking for, what it was trying to understand, was the prevalence of sexual dysfunction among men. Okay, so we're talking about a lowered libido or a or erectile dysfunction. And they found in that first study in 1992 that 5% of men ages 18 to 59 experienced some level of sexual dysfunction. Now that's not a surprising stat. It's kind of maybe what you would assume, and you'd also assume that the vast majority of that 5% would have fallen into that older age category, right, the 50 to 59 age range, because that's where most men start to have those early signs of erectile dysfunction. So that was pre-internet. So in 2012, a Swiss study was conducted, and they found that 30% of men ages 18 to 25 experienced some level of sexual dysfunction. So they didn't even go up to that older category of age range. They just stuck with 18 to 25, and 30% were dealing with that. In 2014, 2 years later, a Canadian study was conducted, and they found that 53.5% of men ages 16 to 21 were experiencing some level of sexual dysfunction. Now, this is so intriguing in its correlation and correspondence to the ubiquity of smartphones and the accessibility of pornography today, that more research is being done. In fact, Harvard University Professor Dr. Morgenthaler has studied this very thing and looked at this, and he reported recently in an interview, he said it's hard to know exactly how many young men are suffering from porn-induced ED. That's what they're calling it. But it's clear that this is a new phenomenon, and that's not rare. So this is something that's impacting young men in their early 20s, whereas we've never seen that before. Forums online are being flooded with hundreds of thousands of young men in their 20s saying that they cannot get aroused without including or involving pornography, either first or altogether. Many end up preferring the fantasy to reality, prefer the pixels to people. And you can start to imagine how that is impacting young male sexuality, how they and how that impacts, again, relationships. So we have found that very intriguing in the studies that have come out. So as we look at this, pornography is impacting what we love, how much we love, how we think about those we love, and how we express love. At our organization, we refer to this as porn kills love, which is just a catchy tagline that youth can kind of get behind to understand this. And I want to, if you can see this, this is generally an animation, but I want you to see this graphic. We have hundreds of thousands of youth that have joined.
And actually, Clay, you just cut out again, but you were just about to say that hundreds of thousands of youth have joined the movement, and they've sent in those images. And so, Clay, are you back?
Are we still good?
Oh, now you're back.
Oh, I had left for a little while.
Yeah, and actually, I finished the thought for you. You were just talking about how the hundreds of thousands of youth have been sending in the images of the Porn Kills Love and the T-shirt and the social media.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm not sure why we're losing some audio and why we can't push this live. But I hope we are covering some of the information you hope to get from this, and we can certainly cover a lot in the Q&A as well. I do want to cover and make sure that we do address this last piece, which is the brain, the heart, and the world, and then we'll talk about solutions. But the world aspect is very critical to understanding the full context of this and what it's fueling and how it's connected to other areas of our society that we're not so much on board with, and that is the fact that pornography is fueling a lot of other areas that are concerning to us societally. One young boy told us this. He said that my parents don't know how bad it really is. They think that porn is just naked people. Porn today is much worse than people with no clothes. And it's interesting because I think that if we ask most adults in my parents' generation, what pornography is when they think about that term, when they think about that word, and most of them would kind of conjure up this idea of basically what is represented in Playboy. That is the iconic symbol for what porn is, and they think that it's magazines of bare-chested women in cornfields, that kind of a thing. But today, it's much different. In fact, I've often used the comparison that it's like comparing a cute little baby kitten to a saber-toothed tiger with lasers on its head or something. Just again, we're dealing with such a different issue today than we've ever had to, and the comparison is quite stark. And we often talk about the availability as the biggest concern. Like how it's just available at every turn. It's in most cases free for youth, at least the teaser elements, and it's walking around with them with their smartphones in all places. And yes, obviously that is a piece of the concern for sure, but we forget to talk about the nature of the content, which that combination, that cocktail, is really what drives my concern, at least. And we have a lot of individuals out there talking about this, and I'm going to skip for time this video. But again, if you go to truthaboutporn.org and you go to the media page, you will see her video and many others talking about some of these their areas of expertise and how pornography plays into that. But what she talks about and what others have talked about is this issue that pornography today has evolved so much that we are seeing the vast majority of pornography, according to one study, 88%, involves physical aggression and verbal aggression to women, and in many cases, straight up violence to women. Now, I don't, if we were all together, I don't need a raise of hands to kind of get a gauge of how many of us think that violence against women is not okay or not healthy. We all feel that way, and yet when it comes to pornography, sometimes we feel like, oh, well, that's just porn, and it's not that big of a deal. As adolescents consume this, and we are finding that pornography is the #1 sex educator on the planet, particularly for young people, and as they consume this content on a regular basis, starting with curiosity and evolving into a habitual and eventually a compulsive level, again, how that is warping their sexual template. Think back to Norman Deutsch's research on how we biologically can rewire our sexual tastes and interests. Think back to the young boy that said he needed violent fantasies to feel aroused at 14 years old. We are seeing this shift, and we're seeing this in the headlines as well as people get more and more. We are seeing increases in many of these areas on college campuses, and even in middle school and high school campuses. We often think about the pornography industry and the sex trafficking industry as two separate things, but according to, we received hundreds of emails from performers in the industry that talked about the fact that they were forced and coerced into doing things, in many cases coerced into even entering into the industry altogether, and forced against their wills. And many of them said, we had one woman actually comment that there were guns off camera and many times pointed at her head, telling her that if she didn't make it look consensual and that she was agreeing to it, that she was enjoying it, that they would kill her. And we can obviously look at that and say, well, okay, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. No one supports that. But that's an extreme and very radical example. And what we're finding is that that it's becoming less and less radical. And more common. These traffickers realize that they can make a whole lot more money by filming these experiences and selling them to mainstream sites where the consumer has no, idea that this is something that she in fact did not consent to. I am not suggesting that all pornography is this way, but we are seeing again a growing number of individuals speaking out, talking about their experience and what's really going on. And what we're finding is that they are again one industry, the sexual exploitation industry. I've actually met with several of these women. I've been able to converse and discuss with them about their experiences, and many of them survivors. And we used to think, again, trafficking survivor was more of a survivor from prostitution and a survivor from those type of environments. But again, more and more these trafficked women are coming out talking about how pornography was the primary focus of their labor. Which is of course disturbing, and we're we're seeing that this content, to kind of wrap up, I think I'm depressing everybody listening, and that's not the intent. We're going to talk about solutions, but I think that to sum up some of what we've been talking about, this is an issue of our day, no question. This has become more and more of a concern. Pornography has evolved in ways that were largely unchecked, and it's changed our attitudes and perceptions toward that content, thinking it's fine, it's normal, it's okay. That, of course, is not the case, but science has caught up with truth, but it's going to take time for science to society to catch up with that science. And I believe that if we can kind of reshape and help people understand the potential risks of pornography without judgment, without shaming, with love and understanding, that we can actually start to change attitudes and perceptions of many who would choose other paths if they were aware of those potential risks. And in turn, we could change the world. And again, I'm not just saying that through like that would be cool, but we're actually seeing that happen in communities all over the world. So again, the impacts on pornography to the brain, the heart, and the world are very much validated and backed up by research. So then the question becomes, and let's spend the rest of the time here, what now? What do we do? I mean, many of you are listening thinking, okay, this is a concern, and I work with youth. I'm either a teacher, I'm a social worker, I'm a therapist. I work in this space, and that this is something that I would like to understand better. So what do we do from here? Well, I want to give you 7 quick things to implement into your school, your home, your community, or practice to counter porn culture. And I think that if we can implement even a portion of these, we will be in a much better place. So let's talk about number 1. Number 1 is include science-based education into your disciplinary policies. I don't care if this is in your school or in your home. There are times where discipline is necessary when kids do things or act out in ways that are very inappropriate with others, or send pictures. Again, that's probably the number 1 thing when we talk to a principal, the fact that they are dealing with every time they confiscate a phone, there's pornography on there, and oftentimes they're sharing it with others, and it's caught at school, and it's in the school bus, and whatever. So a lot of times discipline is something that occurs. Suspensions, expulsions, those types of things. But what we rarely do in those situations is help the kids understand why this is not healthy, why this is a concern. It's not coming necessarily or at least exclusively from a morality perspective of right and wrong. It's coming from the fact that this has actual impacts in the and best health interest of your school or community. And so helping them understand that with science and education is critical, because, and I'll tell you why, this is interesting. Trust right now is at an all-time low with young people. All-time low. They've studied this since the 70s. All-time low. They trust very few things, and among the things they do trust is science. Science is at the very top of that list. They trust facts, cold, hard evidence. So to come at them with a message of morality, and I'm not saying that all teens won't listen to that, I'm just saying what the research is suggesting, that many teens respond to a message founded on cold, hard evidence and facts better than they would a message based on morals or beliefs. So I'm not suggesting you don't teach that, especially in your own home, wherever you stand on that. I'm suggesting at least combining the two, or making sure this is a part of it. Use the research. Science has caught up with truth on this subject. We can and need to start using it. You can go to fightinthedrug.org, get the facts. You can also go to brainheartworld.org, which is a new resource that we just came out with, and you can start to use some of these resources and assets to help educate. And there's so many others, and in fact, we'll talk about that in a second. But number 2, embed education into existing curriculum. So many of you actually are responsible for curriculum. You're actually responsible for speaking up and addressing certain subjects, whether you're a teacher or again just in your own community efforts. And it's important that we look at different areas that we could use or implement some of this education into those existing subjects, like if we're talking about addiction, if we're talking about drug abuse, if we're talking about healthy relationships, if we're talking about media literacy, if we're talking about digital citizenship. We can start to implement certain, even if it's just a little portion, a paragraph, a sentence, or a link into some of those existing curriculums. They can start to hear it from a variety of different channels and directions, and that'll start to help them understand the relevancy and importance of this subject as they would with other issues. Here are a list of websites that you can go to get more information. I encourage you to do so. Many of which are focused on youth, some of which are focused on the broader issue of sexual exploitation, but all of which have great resources and that can guide you in your efforts to address this issue. Number 3, use creative ways to educate. Now, this is important, and this slide animates, but I'll have to just do it kind of all at once here. We did a survey with 2,000 young people from across the U.S., and we asked them to describe in one word how they would categorize or describe these two titles, porn culture and anti-porn. And of course, they described anti-porn as old, outdated, boring, judgmental, extreme, and obedient. They described porn culture as young, trendy, exciting, non-judgmental, level-headed, and rebellious. Now that, if you think about it, that's very difficult to. If you were a youth, if you were growing up, which one do you think you'd want to be a part of? Now, it's no question. In fact, if you were to look at which one would be social suicide to associate with, it would be anti-porn. Now, I need to make it clear that I'm not a huge fan of the term anti-porn. It's very much against something rather than what we're for. But nonetheless, that's how it's viewed. So we need to take a cue from porn culture and take those same elements and bring them on over to the efforts that we're all working toward to help youth understand this and connect with it. We have a mantra at our organization that say, make it cool first and informative second. If we reverse those two, we've lost them. So making sure that is something that we think about. And we've got a lot of resources on our website that you can use, whether it's infographics, whether it's videos, articles that are just free downloads or free streaming that you can harness and leverage to try to present some of this material in a way that's going to resonate and connect with young people, because that's very important. They care very much the packaging in which it comes. There are other websites you can pull from. You can create your own things. And we just suggest that you keep these things in mind. It needs to not be coming from a finger-wagging perspective, but rather an informed and understanding and a non-judgmental perspective. Number 4, school or community presentations. You guys can do these. You're equipped. You can continue to learn as you have today, and other engage with other websites and kind of formulate your own mini presentations or community presentations to address this issue. There are other organizations that can help do this for you. We are an organization that we actually do go into public schools and talk about this issue, and I think that now, do we have, just to clear, are we 6 minutes until we're done? Or do I have time to share this video? What do you think? 6 minutes?
Yeah. Well, how long is the video?
I'll just keep going, and if we have time, I'll share it at the end. But it does show kind of how young people are responding to this difficult, taboo, challenging subject. Many people think that is, that would be the most awkward presentation ever. But again, we've crafted it in such a unique way that it's not that way. And I encourage you to either go on the website and check out our live presentations page so that you can watch this video, so that you can get an idea about kind of how these events work yourself, or you can just take the essence of what we're doing and recreate it. We're just all about getting the message out. And the survey results are very powerful. We do a pre and post survey with every school, and we're able to kind of see the impact that we're having on attitudes and perceptions, and specifically among the undecided market and undecided piece of the audience of where they fall, and we're seeing profound influence in that category. White Ribbon Week is another thing you can implement in your schools. If you don't know what that is a week that you can implement for internet safety, and you can address pornography as a part of that. There is a website, whiteribbonweek.org, you can go check out as well. Number 5, parent outreach and education. This is critical. Parents have to be a part of this. Our efforts are in no way an attempt to circumvent that relationship. In fact, we're trying to spark a discussion within that relationship, which is why we do parent presentations in addition to our youth presentations. But you can also go online and download a free guideline around this subject and learn a lot more about how to do this, because this presentation was not geared for parenting, but we do address that, and there is a lot you can learn. And you can, again, use this for yourselves, but you can also use this free download and send it off to the people in your communities or that you work with to help spread knowledge and awareness on the subject. Number 6, the Fortify program. Now, we were getting tens of thousands of emails from young people asking for help. So we can educate all day. We can say, hey, this is the particular risk. We can make it cool. We can make it engaging. We can make them really respond in a way that we wouldn't have expected. But at the end of the day, many of them are struggling and need help. And the more we know about the brain, the more we know this isn't just something you can white knuckle your way through in many cases. And so where can we turn them? Where can we point them? Well, at first we were pointing them to parents, right? Parents or professionals, counselors, and these youth were saying, heavens no, no way am I going to open up to anybody about this. Not until I hit rock bottom, basically. So they weren't going to do it. And then we thought, well, okay, well, there's all these other organizations that can help you, some of them online, but they cost money. And so they didn't have a credit card. So they were stuck. So we decided after a while to create our own program, and it's called the Fortify program. And it's a free program for youth, and it's kind of, it not only gives them the education and awareness to address this issue, but it also kind of is a Fitbit for their recovery to kind of give them the tools to include allies and track different behaviors and victories along the way. The program has over, this is an outdated slide, over 50,000 users in 155 countries, and we haven't put a single penny into marketing or advertising. I only suggest or say that to suggest that this is a massive issue that we are just barely understanding, because this market has been so silent for so long, and the data from this program has been wildly positive as we can track that in a longitudinal way. Again, this resource is free for youth, so be aware of it, and it's found at fortifyprogram.org. And you can see that, and I'll just say this last thing on this. 95% of those entering the program have not yet spoken to a soul. So these are not being people being pushed by a parent, a religious leader, or any sort of influence in their lives. They are coming on their own. And only 5% are coming with somebody already helping them through this. Number 7, and the final one, as we're concluding, is help us change the conversation. And that involves all of us. Millennials today, luckily, is such a wonderful thing. I love this characteristic of this generation rising today. They are more motivated and influenced by cultural and social change than money. That's a powerful characteristic, and if we can take that research, combine it with viral marketing, and we can mobilize a community, and we are seeing that movement grow. So if this is a subject and topic that you feel is a concern with those that you work with, help us change that conversation. Help us raise awareness on this topic, and push people toward real love, real connections, and ultimately their happiness. And I want to make sure that we get this quote in there, that the secret to change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And I think that is critical, that this isn't just about a finger wag, about kind of what not to do, don't, like they hear so much. This is about what we are building, what we are creating, what we are running toward, and what we are fighting for. I have taken all the time, and I apologize for anyone that has been listening that this, for the technical issues on the slides and maybe some of the audio, but I am grateful for the time that we've been able to talk, and I hope that we can take some of this information back and start an honest dialogue and discussion around this topic and start moving in the right direction. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Clay. Cannot tell you how much I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to be able to share all this great information with everyone. And Clay just left up the URL for his website, so fightthenewdrug.org, and a number of the videos that we weren't able to watch are on there. The additional resources and things that he talked about are also going to be on there. And then I also wanted to just let everybody know that I'm going to try to, maybe, if it's okay with you, Clay, I'll try to put together kind of sort of a presentation with some screenshots because some people were interested in the some of the slides. And then also for those of you, we were going to try to have some time for questions, but we've run out. But for those of you who asked some questions, I'll be able to get back to you later this week or next week. And in terms of our webinar for next month, what we do is each December, we just invite you to go to our website, and we've got 5 years now worth of webinars to choose from. And so once again, Clay, I cannot tell you how much we appreciate you taking that time, and thank you for all those who have attended today, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and helping to make this positive impact in youth life. Thanks again.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.